Welcome to our comprehensive review of the material submitted by a listener about a deeply troubling and ongoing missing person case. Today, we're undertaking a very detailed examination of the sources surrounding the disappearance of an 18-year-old Belgian traveler, Théo Hayez, from Byron Bay, Australia, back in 2019.
And it's just an incredibly sensitive subject. The loss of a young person, especially when they're so far from home with their whole life ahead of them, it's just an immense tragedy.
It really is, and this specific case, the disappearance of Théo Hayez, it has captured international attention, not just for the inherent sadness of it, but for the persistent, frustrating mystery that surrounds his final hours.
That sense of frustration is palpable throughout all the source materials. To set the scene for you, Théo Hayez was born in September of 2000. He was just 18 years old when he vanished on Friday, May 31st, 2019.
And the location is key here.
Absolutely. The Cape Byron area of New South Wales, Australia. It's a beautiful place, but it's also rugged and can be treacherous.
And the sources really emphasize just a truly critical piece of timing. He was in Australia on a working holiday visa, doing what so many young people do.
Right, an adventure.
Exactly. But he was scheduled to fly home to Belgium just 7 days after he disappeared.
Just 1 week later.
1 week. I mean, this single fact that his bags were essentially packed, his ticket was booked, this is really the cornerstone of why his family has been so skeptical of any theory that suggests he just walked away.
It creates an immediate bias against those kinds of theories, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Voluntary disappearance, running away, It just doesn't line up with the facts on the ground.
Not at all.
So our mission with this review is to use the specific details from the sources to map out the timeline as precisely as we can. We need to examine the key pieces of evidence, both physical and digital, and maybe most importantly, analyze the competing theories that try to fill this huge void of the unknown.
And we're drawing on public records, police reports?
Exactly. Public records detailing the efforts of the police, the family, the community searchers. We're really trying to offer clarity on what is firmly established fact and what remains, highly speculative.
Okay. Let's unpack this timeline then.
Yeah.
Let's start with Theo's last confirmed sighting and what happened immediately after, which was this puzzling and ultimately disastrous delay in reporting him missing.
Right. So the final verified sighting of Théo is very precise. He was last seen leaving Cheeky Monkey's bar, which is right in the center of Byron Bay.
Okay.
This was at approximately 11:20 p.m. on that Friday night, May 31st, 2019. After that moment, the trail just goes cold. The silence begins.
And what follows is a really significant gap before the authorities were officially brought in. He didn't return to his accommodation, which was the wake-up hostel.
Right.
And when you look back at the investigation, this delay is probably one of the most challenging aspects.
It certainly compromised that immediate search effort. I mean, he disappears on Friday, May 31st. But the police weren't officially contacted until the following Thursday, June 6th.
Thursday.
That is 6 full days.
Yeah.
6 days where Théo was unaccounted for, and all of that crucial time was just lost.
A 6-day delay when every single minute counts, especially in a place like Byron Bay. I mean, it's a coastal area. It's geographically challenging. Why did it take nearly a week?
Well, the sources clarify some of the, let's call it, bureaucratic process that played into that delay. The wake-up hostel, they're the ones who first called the police on June 6th.
Okay, so 6 days after he was last seen.
But it's 3 days after he was supposed to formally check out of his room.
Yeah.
With transient travelers, sometimes hostels might wait a day or two before they escalate things.
Sure, people change plans.
Exactly. But even so, it still meant he'd been missing for several days before the hostel officially acted on it.
But the hostel wasn't the only alarm bell going off, was it?
No, and this is important. That very same day, Thursday, June 6th, Théo's family, his parents, Laurent Hayez and Vincent Delforge, they also called the New South Wales police from Belgium.
All the way from Belgium?
Yes, driven by their own growing panic. He was in constant contact, and then suddenly there was his uncharacteristic silence. So it was that dual call from the hospital and the family that finally triggered the formal search protocols.
But you can't get that time back.
You can never get that time back.
Yeah.
The time lost between that last sighting and the official report, especially for things like eyewitness accounts or CCTV footage that might get recorded over, investigators will never recover that.
And when the police did finally get to his room at the hostel, the evidence they found there immediately seemed to reinforce what the family believed, that this was not voluntary.
Absolutely. The discovery of his personal belongings, including his passport, still in his room, I mean, that's a crucial piece of physical evidence.
It's everything.
As you said before, a young man who's about to fly home, who leaves behind the single most important document you need for international travel.
Yeah.
He clearly had no intention of leaving the area for good or, fleeing his life.
Mm.
It suggests he only thought he'd be out for a few hours.
Which brings us to the search itself. Once it finally began, the sources indicate the effort was vast, appropriate for the potential tragedy, but they immediately ran into hurdles.
They did. Hurdles with the geography of Cape Byron and, interestingly, the limits of modern communication technology.
Let's talk about the search first. How big was it?
It was immense and highly specialized. The Australian police searches involved helicopters to get a view over that dense bushland, drones for aerial surveillance of the cliffs,
Right.
specialized cadaver dogs, human trackers who can, spot disturbances in the foliage, divers to search the treacherous coastal waters, and even expert rock climbers for those steep cliffs around the lighthouse.
So they were covering land, air, and sea.
Every possible angle. The sheer variety of resources they used really shows you the complexity of the terrain they were up against.
And this wasn't just a local news story. This was an international human tragedy unfolding. Theo's parents, as you said, they traveled all the way from Belgium to Australia in June 2019.
Yes, to personally assist and to, I think, maintain pressure and focus on the search. Their presence gave the case an immediate, recognizable human face.
A face of a grieving family.
And their involvement was absolutely central to keeping the public's interest. The source material highlights this devastating public plea made by Theo's father, Byron Hayez.
I remember seeing that.
He spoke directly to the public, to the cameras, and he mentioned Theo's younger brother. His words were they were heartbreaking. He said, "When I left Belgium, I promised Theo's little brother, Lucas, I would bring his brother home. Please help me keep my promise to him."
Oh, that's just unimaginable.
And that emotional core, it turned the search from a police procedure into a true community effort.
So let's turn to the technology side of it. Before they even launched the physical search, they needed to establish a rough search area using his digital footprint. Where did his phone last connect?
The final phone signal, or ping, was traced to the proximity of Cape Byron in the early hours of June 1st, 2019, so the morning after he was last seen.
And that's significant.
It's pivotal because it pinpointed the search area away from the busy town center and out towards that remote, dark headland.
Okay, so they have a general location?
A general location, yes. And further analysis, which involved cooperation between the Hayes family and Google, actually suggested his last possible whereabouts were near a place called Cozy Corner.
Cozy Corner.
Which is a specific, quite isolated section of Tallow Beach at the base of the Cape.
This detail is so important because it confirms that Théo, for some reason, was moving away from the safety of the town, away from his hostel, and toward the wilderness of the Cape.
Precisely. But the investigation then hit a major technological wall when it came to his communications.
Right, the encrypted messages.
This is where that conflict between digital privacy and a criminal investigation becomes starkly evident. Théo was using WhatsApp.
Which, as most people know, uses end-to-end encryption.
Exactly. And the sources say that the platform, WhatsApp, did cooperate with the New South Wales police. They tried to recover chat logs from the night of May 31st and the early hours of June 1st.
But because of that encryption, they couldn't just hand over the messages. Can you elaborate on why this was such a significant barrier here?
Certainly. End-to-end encryption is designed specifically so that only the sender and the recipient can read the content of a message. Not even WhatsApp itself can access the actual text or voice notes or images that are sent.
So what could they provide?
They could provide metadata. So information like when Théo last connected to the service, the phone numbers he was communicating with, connection times, that sort of thing.
But not the substance.
Not the content. And in a high-stakes missing person case, the content is the missing link. It's everything. It could have revealed if he was planning to meet someone, if he was in distress, if he was, intoxicated and talking about his route, or if he was following directions somebody had given him.
It's a complete black box.
It is. The sources highlight that this limitation was a massive challenge. It meant the police had to proceed without any definitive digital explanation for why he was moving towards the Cape.
So they had the geographical trace from Google pointing them to Cape Byron, but they were essentially flying blind when it came to his motivations or his state of mind because of that encryption.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And it forced investigators, and particularly the community searchers, to rely very heavily on finding physical evidence instead.
Right, because the digital trail went cold.
Exactly. The family felt that the official police response was slowing down without any immediate findings, and they continued to press for more action, more searching. And it was those community search volunteers, spurred on by the family's visible distress, who made the next crucial breakthrough.
What did they find?
In July 2019, so we're talking nearly 2 months after his disappearance, these volunteers found a key item, a gray Puma hat.
A hat.
The sources confirmed this hat was similar to the one Théo Hayez was wearing when he was last seen on the CCTV from the bar.
And where did they find it?
It was discovered in the bushland near Tallow Beach.
The significance of that hat, it can't be overstated, especially given that it was found by volunteers, not the huge official search team.
Its discovery was absolutely pivotal. It was the first piece of physical evidence that directly linked Théo to that treacherous, isolated bushland area. It confirms he was on the trajectory that his final phone ping suggested, near Cozy Corner.
And it suggests he wasn't on the main path.
Not at all. It placed him off the main walking track, deep within the scrub. For the investigation, this single item solidified the search focus squarely on the immediate coastal cliffs and the dense vegetation of the Cape Byron headland.
So as the intensive search efforts started to, wind down, and despite finding the hat, the official focus began to shift, this brings us to the core conflict of the case. The police's main theory versus the family's deep-seated skepticism.
Right. Once that initial search period passed without locating Théo or any other remains, the official police theory consolidated around a single explanation: misadventure.
Misadventure.
The theory posits that Théo, likely disoriented by the darkness, the unfamiliar terrain, maybe alcohol, fell from the cliffs near the lighthouse. They classified his death as an accidental fall, potentially into the ocean.
This conclusion implies that he was a tragic victim of circumstance and terrain, not of any crime. But the sources are equally clear that his family they didn't buy it.
Their rejection was public, and it was sustained. Théo Hayez's family actively refused to accept the police theory that he simply fell into the ocean. They continued to push authorities to keep the investigation open, to follow up on other leads, and to keep alternative, non-accidental scenarios on the table.
And this fundamental disagreement really comes from that core, difficult question. Why would an 18-year-old who's about to fly home end up trying to navigate this incredibly treacherous, isolated terrain in the middle of the night?
Exactly. The sources actually outline a wide spectrum of potential reasons. I believe there are 7 different scenarios in total that try to explain Theo's presence out there.
7.
And we have to analyze these carefully and understand that they're all attempts to fill that information void left by the encrypted messages and, of course, the missing body.
Okay, let's start with the scenarios that line up most closely with the police's theory of misadventure, the more accidental ones.
The first, and maybe the least sinister explanation, is just simple disorientation. That he was genuinely lost. He leaves the bar, maybe he's had a few drinks, he takes a wrong turn thinking he's heading back to his hostel, but instead he just walks further and further into the headland as the route gets darker and steeper.
It's plausible.
Very plausible. The second scenario builds on that idea, but ties it directly to modern technology, which is a very real possibility today. He was misdirected by Google Maps.
Ah, the GPS theory.
It's a compelling one. If he was trying to navigate back to the wake-up hostel and he puts it into a mapping app on his phone, the app might have selected the shortest walking route.
Which isn't always the safest.
Tragically, no. It could have directed him to a route that involves crossing the headland, using that network of challenging bush paths, instead of the safe, longer, well-lit main road through town.
And linking back to that official police theory, the third scenario deals with impairment.
Yes, that he was under the effect of alcohol or drugs. Being intoxicated or otherwise impaired would, drastically reduce his ability to navigate a steep, unlit path. It would lead to poor judgment, and that increases the probability of an accidental fall. It's the core of the misadventure theory.
It aligns with the fact he was leaving a bar late at night.
It does.
Now we move to a scenario that, while it's very sensitive, the sources felt they had to include as a possibility in any missing person case.
And that is the possibility that he was suicidal. The sources acknowledge this has to be handled factually as it was reported, but they also reiterate that no definitive proof was ever found to support this theory.
But it's on the list.
In the absence of other explanations, it has to remain on the spectrum of possibilities that could lead someone to a treacherous cliff edge, alone, late at night.
Okay, so those are the scenarios that largely point to accident or self-harm. Let's consider the scenarios that move away from that towards external factors. These are the theories that the Hayez family seem to favor.
Right. Scenario 5 suggests external guidance or even coercion. The idea that he was taken there by a local.
Why a local?
Well, The sources point out that the route from the main town to the spot where his hat was found, it requires a certain degree of local knowledge to navigate it efficiently, especially in the dark. It's not an obvious path.
So it raises the possibility he was with someone?
Exactly. That he was accompanied or perhaps intentionally directed by someone who was familiar with the Cape's trails.
And the sixth scenario, it provides a more social, though still very dangerous, explanation for why he was heading that way.
He was heading for a party. Perhaps he got directions or an invitation, maybe through those encrypted WhatsApp messages we can't see to a gathering somewhere near Cozy Corner or Tallow Beach.
So if he was rushing to meet people...
He might have been completely unaware of how difficult and dangerous the route he was taking in the dark actually was.
And finally, the seventh scenario. This is the one that really drives the family's continued opposition to the official police theory.
This is the fear of foul play, that he was hurt or attacked by someone. This aligns most closely with the family's refusal to accept misadventure. It suggests malice, or maybe even unintended harm, from an external party who then may have deliberately obscured the evidence.
7 very different scenarios, yet they are all plagued by the same massive roadblock. No body, no definitive human remains. So the sources also had to try and explain that persistent absence.
They do. They list 4 common explanations for the absence of a body in these kinds of coastal missing person cases, and they span from, criminal intent to natural forces.
What's the criminal explanation for the absence?
That would be human intervention.
Yeah.
Concealment. If foul play, so scenario 7, was indeed the cause, then the body could have been deliberately and effectively hidden or removed from the immediate search area by whoever was responsible.
And the next explanation focuses on the terrain itself.
That's the possibility that he's lost deep in the bush. While the searches were incredibly extensive and they used advanced tech like drones and dogs, the bushland in that part of Australia is notoriously dense and unforgiving.
So he could still be there.
It's a very slim possibility after such an exhaustive search, but you have to consider it, that his remains are still undiscovered in a particularly remote thicket or cave, just inaccessible to searchers.
And then there are the 2 scenarios directly related to the powerful, unpredictable ocean around Cape Byron.
First, that he was taken by a shark. This is a possibility in Australian coastal waters. If a body enters the ocean, it could be scavenged by large marine life, leaving little or no trace.
And the second ocean-related theory.
That he was swept away by the tides. The currents around Cape Byron are notoriously strong. If he did fall into the water near the cliffs, the ocean could have carried his remains swiftly out to sea, making a recovery virtually impossible.
The sheer breadth of these 11 competing explanations, 7 for why he was there, 4 for why he's missing, it just underscores the incredible complexity of this case. And eventually, the legal system had to act on the evidence, or lack of it.
Precisely. We have to mention the official step that was taken. A coroner's inquest was set for November of 2021.
And the purpose of an inquest isn't necessarily to find the body, right?
Not at all. Its purpose is to publicly and officially examine all the available evidence and testimony to formally establish the circumstances of his disappearance. It's about providing a legal conclusion, even if it can't provide the emotional closure the family is so desperate for. The fact that this inquest was set years after the event just confirms the continuing official effort to find answers.
So let's shift our focus a bit to the case's impact. This disappearance resonated far beyond Byron Bay. It became a major international story, and it sustained public interest for years after that initial search concluded.
The sources are really clear on this. This wasn't just a localized tragedy. The case quickly became well known in both Australia and Europe, which, is predictable given Theo's Belgian background and the international nature of the traveler community in a place like Byron Bay.
But what's more remarkable is the longevity of the interest.
It really is. The material notes that public interest was still high more than 2 years later. It cites specific events, like commemorations for the 2-year anniversary in May 2021.
And the sustained interest, it seems, was largely fueled by the proactive involvement of the Hayez family and the media who supported their quest for answers outside the official narrative.
Yes, the family was instrumental in shaping that media narrative. Per their specific request, David Murray, who's the national crime correspondent for the Australian newspaper, he actually joined the unofficial searches.
He went out with the volunteers.
He did. That level of collaboration between a major journalist and an active volunteer search party is highly unusual. It really demonstrates the family's deep conviction that the official investigation, was missing something important.
What did Murray's documentation efforts focus on?
He spent 3 months embedded with that unofficial search party. He meticulously documented the case in late 2019. His focus was on detailing the immense dedication of the community volunteers, mapping their search areas, and crucially, articulating the family's narrative and the specifics of their doubt about the misadventure theory.
So he acted as a bridge, in a way.
A bridge, exactly. Ensuring the family's concerns about those other scenarios, external intervention or foul play, were not forgotten or dismissed.
And the lasting public memory of this case was then really cemented by a specific piece of journalism that pulled all these competing narratives together.
That was the 6-part Australian crime podcast called The Lighthouse. And this product, it really highlights the ways specific missing person cases, especially those with a strong element of mystery, community advocacy, and conflicting official stories, enter the wider public consciousness.
Right.
The Lighthouse became essential listening for anyone following the case. It used the source material, the search logs, interviews, to construct this very detailed counter-narrative to the initial police findings.
It essentially made sure that the official police theory that Theo simply fell was constantly being challenged, and that the public stayed engaged with the possibility of these other scenarios.
Precisely. The power of that kind of long-form journalism is its ability to present complex, ambiguous evidence over many hours. It lets listeners really weigh the competing theories in detail, which is something a simple news report just can't do. And it sustained the pressure that was needed for that official inquest to happen.
Finally, in cases with such high public interest, rumor and misinformation can spread like wildfire. It's so important to return to the verified facts.
The sources make a point of doing just that. They specifically note that human remains found in August of 2020 were confirmed not to be those of Theo.
Which is a critical detail.
It is. In that vacuum of information, speculation runs rampant. Clear, factual reporting is necessary to avoid causing even more distress to the family or diverting investigative resources down false paths.
So, as we synthesize all this evidence, what overall insights do the sources offer us about this investigation? They present this detailed look at a case that's really defined by geographic difficulty, technological frustration, and this profound disagreement over what happened.
Right. To summarize the critical facts for you, the learner, we have to first underscore the significance of the timing. The disappearance happened just days before he was due to fly home. That remains the strongest argument against any kind of voluntary action on his part.
And secondly, the lasting impact of that WhatsApp encryption hurdle, it can't be overstated. We see here a fundamental recurring conflict in modern high-stakes investigations.
It's a huge issue. While privacy for users is, of course, paramount in cases like Theo's, the encrypted content could have provided the key piece of navigational or emotional context, that digital roadmap that the physical searches so desperately needed.
And third, the case is just defined by this stark contrast between the official police theory of misadventure, suggesting an accidental fall,
and the family's sustained, publicly articulated belief that other factors, potentially criminal or involving other people, were at play. This disagreement is the tension that runs through the entire investigation.
The role of the community is also such a vital insight here. The investigation clearly shows the dedication of these community volunteers who, through their persistent, unofficial efforts, found that gray puma hat.
A critical piece of physical evidence.
It solidified the last known area of Theo's presence and focused everyone's attention on the dangerous, off-track route he took.
And finally, the ongoing nature of the case, which is confirmed by the setting of that coroner's inquest in 2021, shows that the official search for answers is continuing years after he vanished. This whole exploration emphasizes how information gaps, specifically the missing encrypted messages and the absence of a body force investigators and the public to rely so heavily on circumstantial evidence.
Which gives weight to multiple, often conflicting theories.
Exactly. We're left with this fundamental sense of profound uncertainty about what happened in those dark hours on the Cape Byron headland. The tragedy is that every scenario, in some way, remains plausible.
Indeed, we've detailed 7 distinct scenarios for why he was at the cliff edge that night, from being lost or misdirected by maps to being led there by someone or even harmed.
And we've also explored the 4 main reasons for the absence of his body, ranging from powerful tides in marine life all the way to human concealment.
It leaves us with this crucial question derived from all the material.
Does the simple absence of definitive evidence, the body, the content of the encrypted messages, does that absence become evidence itself? Does it perhaps support the family's persistent fear of intentional concealment? Or does it merely confirm the official theory that the unpredictable and unforgiving Australian coastline claimed a victim in an unexpected moment of misadventure?
That lingering uncertainty is perhaps the deepest tragedy of this ongoing search for truth. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth analysis of the source material concerning the disappearance of Théo Hayez.
Thanks for listening.